I'm going to try to take off my salesman hat and put my grower hat on a little bit here if I can. This is, thank you. This is part of a process that we've been going through for a long time. If you've been to any, if you were at last year's virtual conference, you heard me speak about our media trials. I'm a huge proponent of propagation. Good starts equals good finishes. Clean in, clean out, the whole 9 yards. You can't build a skyscraper on the foundation of a residential home. So I am very, very particular about how we start our plants off, even though they're lettuce and they're in there for a short time. Everything we do there affects everything else we do in this system. So I'm going to share a little bit of my thought process with you and how our trials apply to production. So let's go. So start off, purpose of propagation and production, a little alliteration for you. You have to know what you're doing. Why are you doing this? Throwing some seeds in the ground or in your media is great, but you have to give yourself perspective. Many of us, it's driven by research or by sales, by a push or pull factor. And you have to get that honed in perfectly because it's it should guide you the rest of your process. If you're going to grow for a reason, make sure you always remember that reason. I took this picture in June, and it's been a blessing and a curse. I think it's a beautiful plug. I shared it with my vendors under a great light. That's a GE Arise Factor 300 light. We have great structure here. We'll go into a little bit more later. But as with everything else, my one answer led to about 1,000 more questions. And so we went down the rabbit hole with it and tried to get it better. So for my perspective, for my prop trials, these are the factors that I look at. It's a lot to read. I'll talk through these. The slides are available, so just the best you can. Sorry if it's wordy. I have my 6 factors listed there. Those are the things that I look at the entire process. So every one of those 6 factors has a target when we start, and it's constantly reevaluated by our processes through our data and our notes and our analysis, our staff, and our vendors and our customers. On the right side there, you're going to see real world examples of how you would apply these. So the W's are your who, what, where, when, why. Yield is propagation yield for this. So every time I talk about yield here, I talk about propagation yield. It's not something that many people think about, but I have certain targets my propagation has to be at, weight and leaf development, or I didn't hit my yield. And then I'm not going to put it in my finishing because it's not worth my time. And then obviously your systems, your controls, what do you have control of and what don't you have control of? Inputs, labor, and data, and how those apply to an actual order. So if I were to get an order for X amount, how do I apply all that stuff to what I'm actually doing out in my greenhouse, right? And then once you have those targets, I don't care if you got to nail them to the wall. I repeat things to my employees, my growers all the time. Keep remembering why you're doing this. Remember our 6 targets, because if you don't, we're going to stray. You're going to get drift, and you're going to allow something to be okay that's not, or you're going to grow something you didn't want to grow. And it's great, but you forgot that this is why it's for. So keep your perspective. That's a big part of ours. So we start out there. As we dive into those W's a little bit more, I want you to think about your customer, chefs, retailers. Maybe you're selling to a resale. Maybe you're selling bulk. Who knows? I have people that sell to zoos and other farms. They just grow feed for those guys. So you have to understand your customer, and that's going to start that process of why you started growing a plant in the first place. So be very in tune with those people. Be very in tune with what their mission is and what they expect you to give them and how you're going to get it to them. Variety selection is huge in this process. There are a billion types of lettuce. Brian showed you all the strawberries out there, tomatoes galore, anything you want to grow, kales. We had 13 varieties of kale in our greenhouse last spring. It was ridiculous, and they were all awesome, but you just all serve a purpose. But you have to know not only what works well for you, but what meets the spec of your customer, and then understand the variables of that kale at the same time, or that variety. There's a spot in your greenhouse, not where your greenhouse is, where this is going to go in your greenhouse. You better know that when you start planting your seeds. Most people do. Some people overlook that. Some people just look for the spot that's available, or even if you know where it's going to go, is that best for this? Are you starting off on a successful foot by providing your plants the best environment? Because maybe it shouldn't go in this corner, it should go in this corner, but I got plants in this corner for another 3 weeks. That's a decision to make, right? So be very well aware of where this is going to go. And then your timeline. This is another thing that I struggle with when I talk to some people on the business end of things, is plants don't appear, right? right? You can't just come in and say, hey, can I get 500 plants tomorrow? No, you can't, because I had to plant those 6 to 8 weeks ago. And so that's a real world thing. I have to be thinking, I'm thinking of March right now, right? And I call my vendors in August and say, what's your Christmas schedule look like? And what do you need? You gotta be thinking ahead. That applies to floriculture, and it applies to horticulture, it applies to food, everything. And not everybody understands that when you want to start off, especially when you're trying a new crop or new variety. You may not know how long it takes in your greenhouse. And there's only one way to find out, and that's through trials. And then what's the purpose of your product? I kind of hit on that already, with who's going to be getting this in the end use. Again, when I talk about yield, I'm talking about propagation yield. I'm talking about what I get out of that plant when it's finished. And these are the factors that I need to consider. There isn't weight for a seedling. It's not going to be pounds. It's not going to be ounces. It's going to be grams. I'm looking for grams of a lettuce seedling. Now, you'll argue that I have to cut that seedling in order to weigh it, and we do. I get a leaf weight, I get a medium weight with a medium, dry and wet. There's lots of ways to look at that metric, but find something that works for you that's easy to do. We take usually about 5% of our tray or our crop, and we'll cut those and we'll test them, since we're overseeding anyway. And I would need to know what that average yield coming out of propagation is. And then is my color right? With lettuces, I have dozens of colors that we're going to need. That color is influenced and affected by my light and my temperature. And so I need to make sure that they're coming out the right size and the right color that I want to put them in. If you're growing a red leaf lettuce, that anthocyanin doesn't photosynthesize as effectively as a green does, as the chlorophyll. And so there's an argument to be made that I want to keep my reds a little green when I start and flip that color later on, so I get a big robust head and then make a change color later. So maybe I don't want a red seedling when it's coming off. But definitely things you can look into when you're growing your propagation. The morphology. So this is a big one. When I talk to my growers, I say, go out and take some seedling weights. And they say, we got really good weights. And I ask if it was a good seedling. And they say, yeah, it's good weights, all this, it's big, but they don't always understand the morphology at first. That being said, I can have 2 4-gram lettuce plants, and one's all stem because it's leggy and was grown under not enough light, and one's all leaf because I had the right amount of light there. That's important to understand. So with every weight we take, we also take a leaf count, a true leaf count, not the cotyledons. And so we're going to target this 2 to 3 gram seedling that has 4 to 6 true leaves, then I know I'm ready to go for most of my varieties of lettuce after a 10 to 14 day period. And then my stipulations. We previously trialed for a kosher company, so we went through kosher certification. It was great. They basically asked me to have 0 bugs anywhere, which if you work in a greenhouse, you know that's virtually impossible. We did it through a lot of work. We made kosher certified kale. We got the certification, it was great, but we had to know that when we started in prop. Just with the bugs, the products we use, it all starts right there again. So I have to be willing and ready, not only for my finishing, but I have to make sure that I don't have shore flies and fungus gnats or anything else, nematodes crawling in that plant, because then I lose my certification, and that starts propagation. And then food safety, huge driver for us in our industry. We are SPF food safety certified. We just went through our 3rd audit. Fairly painless. Once you get good at it, you know what you're doing. It's SOPs and following the rules. We pride ourselves in our food safety. Food safety starts the minute we come on site. It's in our culture, and it's also very prevalent in our propagation. We do swabs to test for bacteria after we clean every tray, after every run. We clean all of our flats, and then we check our water for pathogens regularly also. And that is both plant safe and food safe. And all of these things are going to come together to help distinguish what I need to do to grow the right crop and start it off correctly in my propagation area. And then we have systems controls. I don't know what everyone has. We have a pretty high-tech system that we use as far as greenhouses go. And there's a lot higher tech greenhouses out there if you want to get into a germ chamber or a growth chamber that's really dialed in and specific. For our scale, we can fit roughly 8 times our output in our propagation area right now. So it's overkill, but it's a lot to manage. We have 66 4x8 trays. They go 6 high and 11 long. It's a pretty rudimentary stack system, but it works really well for throughput, and we've improved that dramatically in our new greenhouse that we're building right now. But that climate has to be consistent there. And now I have 66 mini climate zones that I have to make sure I'm monitoring, and that they're right for every crop that I have in there, because I may have romaine here and kale here and arugula there. So sensors. If you don't have regular sensors, I would recommend Govee on Amazon. I don't know if anyone's used a Govee. They're about this big. They're little temperature and humidity sensors you can put in your house. but they will log data, millions and millions of points of data, and it has an app and a graphic and everything. So we can walk right up to a Gogi sensor, throw them anywhere in our propagation area, and immediately see live temperature, humidity, the average over 1 week, 3 weeks, a year, whatever. They cost like $12. They're nothing. We haven't done. Govee. Sorry, I didn't put a picture here. But it's a good alternative for us. You can be high tech. It doesn't mean you have to be high tech, right? There are lots of simple solutions that make us cost effective and still get the job done. But I need to monitor that. If I'm going to monitor it, I got to know what my targets are, right? So for lettuce, again, you want that 60, 75, 80 degrees, high humidity and propagation, but you don't want to suffocate your plants. Temperature control is big, water is big. I think light is the biggest thing for our propagation. And we have a ton of trials in propagation, lighting, how close your light is, what morphology I need, like I spoke about earlier. But after I set all these settings, my water temperature, my fertigation, you got to keep track of them. You got to check them all the time, every day. It's super important because as easy as propagation can be to grow, it can also be as easy to kill. One little thing is going to do it for a year, and it's going to set you back, and you have to start all over again. I didn't talk much about photo period. Typically, we target DLI, and that DLI for lettuce is 12 to 17. You can shoot for those in propagation. There's a lot of literature out there on going higher, and a lot of people that just keep their lights on 24/7. Currently, we keep our lights on 24/7 because I haven't found a reason not to. My plants love it, they're doing well, but again, we're supercharging things. We have control over those things. We're adding CO2, we have good supplemental air, we're making great water temperature and nutrients. So if you can do that, you can push it, but be very aware, just like in your finishing zone, how you're doing that in propagation and how that photo period reacts. A lot of people will do maybe 12 to 16 hours in prop, depending on the intensity of your lights. But as your photo period shrinks, the intensity of your light has to go up, so you get the same amount of energy in that time frame. So it's definitely a discussion to be had. Inputs, what are you going to put into this propagation? So you're going to need media, you're going to need fertilizer, you're going to need light. Media, fertilizer, you're going to need seed too. They're going to be fairly cheap on the whole, comparatively. Lights are expensive. You can go with cheaper lights if you know how to use them right, but you're probably going to have a higher maintenance cost. Typically, the cheaper the light, the quicker the replacement and the higher maintenance cost. So T5s, T8s, even some of the smaller LEDs don't last as long as a good commercial horticulture light. I would suggest if you have the means to invest in good horticulture lights if you can. There's plenty of good affordable options out there, and it makes a world of difference. But you have to know what's best for your plant, best for your system. I'm talking about the distance from the plant. My racks are preset. I only have so much room between my lights and my seedlings. I have to know, even if I want to put the best light there, it's way too close to my plant, it's going to burn to hell. So I need to make sure that I'm getting a light that isn't too hot, too intense for the distance that I have available. Or maybe I can move them. Maybe you don't stack them at all. Maybe you have a traditional greenhouse. You can stick 100 trays under an HPS light if you need to. But you got to make sure that you're supplementing heat then too, because it's really cold down there. So there's a lot of factors to consider with your inputs and where you get those from. We'll talk again about supply chain here. Is your media available? Is it sustainable? Is it the best media for your plant? Things like peat moss are a little more acidic. Things like rock wool are a lot less forgiving because you can do whatever you want with rock wool and dirt. And so be very well aware of what not only you're comfortable with, but what your plant is comfortable with. And then labor, often overlooked in propagation because it's such a small time frame for a lot of people, especially in lettuces and leafy greens. People, tools, material, and time, that's what it is. I have some of my employees here, they'll tell you that we're very big on processes and efficiency. I don't need to be holding your hand if we all know what we're doing together. We don't want to micromanage, but you have to allocate some labor. The important things that we've found is once you understand the skill level of the task needed, the skill level needed, and the skill level of your employee, you can apply those people better. And this applies in propagation. It seems like a big picture, but it's not. That is still a very important part of our process, as I've mentioned, and we still need some intense interaction with our plants there. And so I need to consider things like, do I have the right people doing the right job, and are they given enough time to be there? I think that you need to walk around and look at every plant every day if you can, and I want my people to do that. That may not be feasible every day, but that's what I want you to shoot for. How much time do you have to do that? What are you looking for when you're looking for those things? Have you been empowered with the knowledge to know what chlorosis looks like and when to be worried about it? What a shorefly is, the difference between a thrift and an aphid. Those are all super important. And so that labor aspect has an underlying theme of education and empowering your employees the best you can, because they're your eyes and ears most of the time. In propagation, I also need to make sure they understand moisture content and how to measure my water and how to manipulate your water. Do you water for longer and less often, or more often and less at that time? They need to understand that, so I don't have to go out there and do that all the time. And so we have to address propagation. And then make it intuitive and easy. That's probably my biggest takeaway message for my labor in propagation. Make sure that they have all the tools they need, that they have an area where those tools belong, and that those tools are right there by their propagation area. All your time is lost walking around in the greenhouse, and greenhouses are big, so put it right there. Make it safe, make it easy, and make it as fun as you can. Our plants listen to music all day. Sounds crazy, but there's enough data out there to make it worth it, and even if it doesn't work, my people like the music, and so do I. So things like that, make it easy, make it fun, make it good for us. And then our data, data-driven decisions. I can't say that enough. Lewis hit on it with Open Door earlier. That's what they do. That's what plant empowerment is. I have gotten through that book a couple of times. It is thick, to say the least. I recommend it, but give yourself some time. But that data is what makes us better, right? My employees know that I'm going to pound them if they are not making a decision based on the data or their observations at the very least. Don't just tell me that's what you're going to do. I'm going to want to know why. And I trust them all now because we've been through this process a couple times. But that data has to be collected. It goes back to the sensors we use and the system that we use and what are we monitoring and what are our targets. And all that perspective we talked about comes to fruition at the end here. So we have climate data. As you can see, this is the graph of one of our grow systems. That's a Fortimax system. It's just tracking humidity, temperature, and VPD, things that are just important. That's from, I think that's from our crop area. It's from zone D, so that's from a finishing area actually. But that graph gives you a representation. Most people that have seen graphs like that know exactly what we're looking at here. The inverse relationship between temperature and humidity, and the VPD corresponding to the temperature. And you know what you're looking at right here. But we also pull those numbers out. We want to see those numbers. And I don't want to see just one day. I want to see it was in prop for 2 weeks. So I need a 2-week climate profile on this. I need to know what happened that whole time. And do I need daily averages or do I need a 2-week average? What gives you the best picture? And then what's your standard deviation on that data, right? If I have a 2-week average, but my standard deviation is like a 20, you're all over the board. You're not consistent. And that's not bad to have a bad answer or to have bad, sorry, it's not bad to have bad information. It's bad to have bad data. And what I mean is if you're telling me that our set points were wrong, we didn't get there, that's good. Now I know what I need to fix. So stay on top of your data and collect that. Production data is huge in propagation. What are we doing? What materials are we using? Is it effective and efficient? And then yield metrics. Go back to yield metrics. It's plant spot and it's weight for that plant spot because that's all that really matters to me. How many spots can I get in that space? How long does it need to be there? And how much does it weigh when I'm doing the best job I can? That's in propagation and refinishing in the end. So after considering all this, I can talk about the last trial that we actually did. So what we knew we needed, we liked peat moss for our system. It did the best for us. We use an ebb and flood system right now. We're really happy with it. We found that the volume mattered, but we didn't know how much. And we needed a standardized plug. That's been a big thing for us. I need a standardized plug because I want to use an automated seeder because seeding takes forever and it's inconsistent when people do it. No offense, Stacia, my seed technician's in the back. But she's been helping me figure this out. And if you're going to have an automated seeder, you need to make sure that all the plugs are the same size, in the same spot, the same moisture all the time. Some medias don't offer that. And so we need to find out something that works there. So that was our first thing, a standardized plug, and we wanted peat moss. We knew that. And then we wanted new lights. Our lights had been old, they were kind of outdated for us. We knew we could do something better. And so we needed to consider that spectrum that we talked about and all the other aspects that those lights are going to go into. And then there's what we tested. We went with the Jiffy J7 plug, which has been our workhorse for a long time. A lot of volume, good peat moss, it's organic certified. It's very inconsistent when it expands. That's where our problem with standardization came from. I get a great flat of good plugs, but the holes are all over the place. And so it's hard to run them through a seeder. And then the Jiffy Performa, this is actually my new favorite plug right now. It's not organic because it's an emulsified peat moss. So it's the exact same stuff that goes into that J7, but it's all stuck together and you don't need the netting around it. Those two aspects are important as long with the rock wool, that they don't fall apart because I have an NFT system. Anytime you're going to circulate water, you can't have your media fall apart. So that was something we learned, or did learn when we worked with last year. So, and then we put that against Rockwell, which has been our standard for a long time. 1.5 inch Rockwell has been something we've used time and time again. We get great yield with it. Those are very different medias, and the Rockwell being completely inert and coming in at a pretty high pH, the J7 being organic and coming in at a fairly low pH, and having to learn how to grow those together was a challenge, so that we got the same type of data. And then we had 2 types of lights, both GE lights. These are winners from previous trials for us. We used the Link 1.0 and we used the Factor 300. These are both fantastic lights, and I would recommend either one of them. I have both in my system right now, but I need to find which one is going to be best for us for our lights. These are the first trial run trays. So I want to analyze this a little bit. The tray on your left is the Proforma. The tray in the middle is Rockwell, and the tray on the right is the J7 plug. First things we should notice is density. My Rockwell is about a 95 count, or 105 count. My Jiffy is a 95 count, and the Proforma is a 200 count. This matters, and we'll talk about why. But we put them in there knowing that these were standards that we wanted to work with. We tried them all out, and we've moved on to other trials to test that volume. But this is what we got. Things that I look at here, in your Rockwell tray, one thing you don't see is any dividers between your media. That helps you have more space for your plants. It also means that you're probably going to get more media in your actual tray. Both the Jiffy and the Proforma have spaces in between the media, so something to consider. The development of these plants is interesting.
Use the mouse as a pointer.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So this is the Proforma here. What you see here is these are really good looking plants and good development, especially I think this is day 9. So I'm happy with that, but they are too crowded already. So my leaves are overlapping, which is going to start affecting each other's morphology. They're going to start wanting more nutrients that I can't give them. I wonder if the moisture holding capacity is good enough. So these need to go out probably yesterday. And then I need to decide if yesterday is the right starting point for the path I need to be at the end. My Rockwell here has good development, but it looks slower. Typically we see this in Rockwell. It's going to trail behind some of the organic media and prop, but it does fantastic as a holder in our NFT system. So we're going to give them another chance there and let them keep running. They are not crowded. They have a lot more space. They're normally a little bit slower to develop. Sometimes it's because of the hole, sometimes it's because of the seed. But I get a lot of algae on my Rockwell. It's a lot of surface area for my light to be under when we keep that material wet. And then the J7. J7 is my favorite at this point. Good leaf development, very similar to the Proforma. The Proforma is actually a little bit better in leaf development if you look closer, but the J7 has a lot more room. And then you look at your germ rates, fairly similar. You can see some spots missing here and there, but over a 200 tray batch, that's not going to affect me too much. So that was what we saw after day 9. There's a close-up of what those plugs look like when they came out. So 1.5 inch Rockwell, inch Rockwell, J7 here, and the Proforma. So everyone's going to see things they like and don't like out of this. The first thing I'm going to look at is my actual plant morphology. So one of these things is not like the other. My Rockwell is laying much more flat, and it looks like it doesn't have the same leaf development. This has actually caused problems for us. For some reason, under the intense light we get in our propagation area, that plant likes to lay low in that much space. And when it lays low, it gets affected by that algae, and the leaves start getting wet, and we see some fluorosis and rot in those little seedlings. Something that we learned right off the bat. So do I drop the intensity of my lights? Do I change my media? Those are all things I have to decide based on what I'm seeing here. Then you have your 1 inch Rockwell, something I've used a lot of for a long time, because you can fit a lot in small space and it's easy to grow in. That's a good developed plant, but not nearly the leaf mass that you see from the other two organic materials. And then the J7, big broad leaves. You see the root structure coming out already, which you don't see in the Rockwell. Sometimes that's due to watering. If you overwater Rockwell, those roots tend to stay in there or try to push out quicker than usual. So that J7 actually looks like it was doing really well with our watering method, with our nutrient, and those roots coming out and really starting to fill in that spot. So when I transplant them, I have this workhorse's powerhouse of roots and leaves that want to go and explode. And then the Proforma, obviously a lot less volume than anything else. Something that we knew when we were going in with, we just considered, but we wanted to see how it did. Love the leaf structure here. I love the leaf structure and the root development in comparison to the bigger items. So for me, that's my winner right now. I like that it takes up less space. I like that it has the same morphology as a bigger plug. And I like that root development. It really just needs to cling to that. It's ready to go out, ready to explode. So that's really what I liked when this came out. Not that I don't like any of the other ones, but this seemed to work for me. And so now I'm ready, right? I'm ready to go put this in my system and let's do it. We found our media, we found our lights, let's go. And we start asking ourselves, this is good. And yeah, it's fantastic. Everything worked out really well. But then it's not good because we didn't consider another aspect on this. So we had great light and great morphology. We had a perfect lead count for us. We had great roots, and we hit our target weight at that day. The problem was we did it too fast. We almost did it too good. And so now I have my propagation set up to come out in 14 to 17 days, and I got the perfect plug in 8 or 9 days. And I have no place for that plug to go right now. Now, in production, we would hopefully never make that mistake, but in a trial, something we didn't necessarily anticipate, it growing that much better. And so now we have a decision to make. Now we have to figure out, do we go with this plug and change everything? Because if you're going to change your propagation, you're going to change your system in finishing. And you're going to need to make sure that you have room for places to grow and how much time to spend finishing, when does it need to come out, changes the whole book. And is that worth it? Okay, now we're going to keep moving with our trial a little bit. And so this is what we started looking at. We started looking at our yield and our pull. What starts this process? My customer starts this process. I need this much now or when, right? And I start looking into how I'm going to provide that. What it comes down to, with the really crazy simple math over there, is if I need this many pounds and this many ounces as my target, I can tell you how many plant spots I need. That plant spot is then driven by my media. Because if I need 5,000 plant spots to fill that order, do I want to put 5,000 plant spots in 50 trays or 200 trays? Do I have room for that? And is that the right media? And is it the right volume? These are all things we have to start considering when we start this process. So now we know plant spot drives our media type. Now we want to look at our size. This is something that I struggle with right now. Obviously, more volume means more volume, and it's typically better in a lot of these situations. But do I want to grow a quicker plug that I know is great? Is that going to give me the same yield as a bigger plug that may take another week or 10 days? That's really what we're talking about here. Because that J7 is a workhorse, and it's been great for us. But if I can speed up, can I speed it up enough to get another crop turn in next year? Because another crop turn means another sale, means more profit. Means I can grow more lettuce, right? And so we targeted a 75 count Jiffy J7 versus Jiffy Performa, because we really wanted the ability to keep that tray in there longer. And that was just for the setup of this trial. So more time, that fits our production right now. We were already at 14 to 17 days. We could go up to 21 if we needed to and work on that. That volume should give us more space. That improves airflow. The plants can grow a little bigger. They get a bigger workhorse. Now you don't want to go too high, because that lettuce is only going to want to grow for 6 or 7 weeks before you start going down the other side of that growth curve. So you want to make sure that whatever you put out from propagation is going to have ample time to fully develop in your system. But again, we're driving pretty fast with our system. So this is the way we thought it would work. But now I need more trays, right? If I'm only going to put 75 flats or 75 plant spots in my flat, now I need more flats to get that done. And I don't know if I have space for that. You have to consider that spatial aspect of your propagation and if it leads correctly into your production. So now that we've decided on our media and we know our plant spots, I can do all that crazy math there, and now I need to have 71 flats. That's what I need for this batch. And if I'm going to do a perpetual harvest on a weekly basis, I have to have 71 flats every single week. That's a lot more space. And that's what that kind of looks like right here. Those flats are going to expand out. If I use my rock roll where I can get 200 count in, I only need 50 flats, and that's a lot less trays in my prop. But if I want to get that bigger, I need a lot more space. And that is going to compound as you mess with these variables. So I want a bigger flat, I want a bigger plug, but I want to make sure that I can fit all these flats in. And now you have to start doing a little math. That space is always going to be your limiting factor when you start talking about propagation, because you only have so much space that you can afford to control, that you can comfortably control, and that your plants can grow in, right? And so it comes down to space and time. Let's say we want to room for 40 flats. Work that math out real quick. Well, if I need 40 flats a week, and I'm going to keep my trays in there for 2 weeks, then I need 80 flats at any given time. And that's if I'm turning it over right on the same day and don't want to give myself time to clean. That's a real thing. Because if I only have room for 80 flats, The day I take those 40 out, I have to put 40 right back in that day or I'm off my schedule, which means I better have the people and the resources to clean those flats, move those flats, plant those flats, and put those flats back in. Make sure my system's optimal and do all my food safety testing. It's a real concern and a real problem. So then you can spread out your time. But every time you spread out your time or contract your time or crop, you're affecting your finishing. You're affecting your overall crop terms per year. It all starts right there. So you've got to figure out how you're going to do that. So the little map that you see there, that 20 trays per week, that's easy. But if I need 40 trays per week, I technically don't have space for that. I need 80 total trays at any given point in time. It's real simple math that I think people overlook sometimes when they're trying to figure out the space allocation for propagation, how it affects the crop turns that you come out with every 12 months. And then again, it's all relative. That's kind of a thing I say a ton of work, and everybody gets sick of hearing me say that. But this is what we came down to. We knew that peat moss had better production. That was system dependent for us. Our trial ended up telling us that exactly. We're still running with peat moss. We love it. We hope that it's sustainable. We'd like to check with our vendors on that. That is a real concern. Not just supply chain, but availability. That is mine like any other resource. And ours comes from Canada. We are very well aware now we've proved out that volume impacts the size and time. And so the bigger plug, the more time, but it also impacts my plant. So do I want a giant 8-leaf plant in 14 days, or do I want a really efficient, compact plant in 7 days, and do I get the same yield out of that? That's going to be proven out as those plants continue to grow out in our finishing system right now. And then all that media is going to find our optimal time. That's what I'm talking about. That's really what I want to bring home. When you're picking out your lights and you're picking up your media, it's going to define the optimal time in your system, and how you use that system is really important to the success and the crop turns you get every year. And then your yield is determined by propagation and light. Those are your inputs. One of my favorite things to show people is do a dry mass analysis of your crop. Basically dry it down and it crumbles into dust. That's what you have created, that dust. You put in water, you put in food, and you put in light, and you create that dust. Now, that manifests itself in the shape of a plant or a fruit when you add all the water that we add to it. But that's really what you're making. That's what makes you efficient. And you do that with nutrients and seeds and light. That's really all it is. And so how do we do that better, and how do we manage that the most effective way for our system and our product to keep it all into perspective? This is one of the things that we found. This is a Monte Carlo lettuce. It's a romaine type, pretty popular. We really like growing it. It does well in our system. We use the Julian dates. These weren't grown that long ago. You can see those great plugs. So went back to J7, kept using it as our workhorse. Until I can find a perform a plug that really matches that, I'm going to stick with this right now. I'm going to deal with the managing the labor and sanitization and the seeder, trying to get that better right now, because I know I can get these seedlings in 10 to 14 days. Those are great seedlings to me. These seedlings are going to make a great crop. How do we know that? Because as you can see in the chart on the right, we track that growth rate every week that it's in our system. We go out there and my wonderful growers and assistant growers take weights, observations, leaf count data of a group as long as it's in our system. And now we can create a chart like this for you. And I can say, if I start here, I know I'm going to get here. Now you have to match your climate up, and you have to make sure your labor is right, and everything else is there. But I know that I have the potential to grow a 9-ounce plant at the same time, if I can start here. If that seedling doesn't start there, I'll never get to that 9-ounce plant. And you have to know how to look for that, and you have to know how to create that. So that's pretty much it. Best plugs. And next steps is more trials. All the plugs that I showed you and talked to you about are in our finishing system right now. There's 2 more trials right behind it. If you could get me pro forma in less than 10 weeks, I'd have a lot more trials going right now, but they're backed up. And they send me free trials, so I don't complain too much. But we will be going. I'd like to go to pro forma. I really like that based on what we found, and it seems to work well in our system. But I'm just as happy using the J7 plug right now if we continue to get this production and jump around the labor. We are putting new lights in. We went with the Factor 300. A lot of research on that. That light has a great spectrum for seedling production in lettuces. It also is extremely uniform. So on a 4x8 tray, that layout, it's almost no deviation whatsoever. They're intense. They can be dim, but they are fantastic for propagation. I recommend looking into them. The distribution of that light over a surface is the best I've seen, and they won't break the bank doing it. So we just put in about 15 trays of those in our propagation area. That's what we're going to roll with in production right now. And we'll keep trying to perform it. hopefully with bigger volume. That was the next step, was getting a plug that was bigger. So I'm going to say your turn, and what I mean is happy to work with anybody. I want other people to try this stuff. I want other people to tell me their propagation methods. Are you doing this? Are you not doing this? Part of that cloak and dagger I talked about earlier, I'm trying to dispel that. I don't know what anybody else is doing. Not a lot of people talk about it, and we don't get a chance to talk. So, feel free to reach out to me directly. I like to chat, I like to talk shop. I want to see what everybody else is doing. There's my picture again that I started with. I keep that picture pretty handy because I like to be reminded of all this stuff I just talked to you about and help keep my job in perspective. Any questions? Yes, sir.
All media related, hydrofiber.
Please repeat the question.
Go ahead, sorry.
Then you work with hydrofiber.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in your thoughts?
I like hydrofiber. For the longest time, sorry. The question was, have I done any work with hydrofiber, and what are my thoughts on that? We used hydrofiber once. Initially, when it came out, it was a source, and kind of like when cocoa came out, and it was really salty because they weren't rinsing it. You didn't know where the fiber was coming from or what the process going through there. I like the hydrofiber. It didn't hold the same amount of moisture as my other media, which is fine, but it didn't work in my system. We also got a significant amount of algae growth on it, but again, system dependent. I think maybe if you were using a boom system or something on a less water, more advanced watering, it may work very well. But the material itself is promising.
It's just the shortage of, about the shortage of peat moss.
Oh yeah.
It's getting worse. There's going to be more cannabis growers out there.
Yeah.
So with any media, sometimes you already know, it's a learning curve on how much water. Are you using any wetting agents at all?
Not right now. No, we don't use any wetting agents right now. We haven't had to, based on the media that we're using.
That would help with some things.
Absolutely, no, it's a great suggestion. Some of the other media we trial, and that was one of the things I talked about last time I did this presentation, was jute. We were really happy with jute. We used a jute source from Holland called Holland Plug. So if you're not familiar with jute, it's made from plant fibers, it's organic, it has all the properties of rock wool, but it's sustainably sourced, and it's inert, chemically inert, so it's what you put in it. And that did really well. It was a sourcing thing. It's only made in Holland right now. I've done work with Clever Pot, which is another peat moss, that's balsa peat moss. We did work with some fiber, we did work with foam, a couple foam companies are out there. Right now they're gaining a little traction. You think of the peanuts that you can wash down, the packing peanuts you can wash down your sink, it's made out of kind of the same thing, so that it stays in your system for a while, but it slowly biodegrades over time. It's also an inert. We got a lot of algae on that also. But yeah, there are a lot of implements and variables that you can control. You have to know your media and you have to know your system.
Every media is going to have its own.
Absolutely, and your system also, like I said, like some people will do profit in an NFT or in a germ chamber, like you can do lots of different things there. This is what works for us and the process that we use to get there.
What about Oasis?
I don't like Oasis. Sorry if anybody's got Oasis. It's the only thing that's ever given me a problem.
Last thing is, the business model that you guys have, in my background is more the ornamental side, a lot of things are done by contract growers. Like, have you guys considered the model that you contract out all your propagation, or do you want to have everything?
So that's a good question, and it's something I didn't hit on probably well enough in my previous slide. I guess it's too commonplace for me. Go back a step. Eden Green doesn't sell lettuce and will never sell lettuce. We sell our system and our technology. And so what I'm trying to do is create a system, SOPs, processes, and data to give to all my growers so they can grow better anywhere in the world. And so while I like the contract method in some respects, it doesn't apply to us in our business model. We work with our clients on that, but our clients are buying greenhouses to grow produce for their clients.
You want to have total control of it, basically.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
What's the frequency duration of your floods during?
It depends on the medium, like we said, but rock will all go 7 days. Sorry, I'm not repeating the question. I apologize. The question was, what is the frequency of our floods in our propagation system? And it's dependent on the medium. So rock wool, although I've gone as long as 12 days without watering my rock wool. So rock wool has a very distinct dryback period that it needs. You have to know that. I've gone as far as to weigh my trays every day you know your volume, you know how much water it holds and what that weighs. So you take that weight every day until you get down to 40% of that weight. Now you have an idea. You don't have to do that for the rest of your growth. Now you know that somewhere between 7 and 9 days in this climate, I'm going to have to water my crop again. You also start to learn what that feels like. So I tell my growers this all the time. There is no silver bullet there. I like to say less is good. I mean, everybody kills their houseplants by overwatering them typically. So stay away from that water. You can drown plants as easily as you can let them dry out. So, but rarely is because I'm doing a bigger volume in media that holds a lot of water. It's rare. So if my crops are in 2 weeks, they may get 2 watering events. If you're pushing your roots out faster, you have to be cognizant of that because they're coming out and you want them to do that. You want your roots to come out because when you put them in your NFT system or your tray system, you want those roots to be out and looking. But if they're out, you may have to water more often because you don't want them to die back too much, and you don't want them to rot either. So, not a good answer all the way around. It's got to be out there. You got to be out there looking. And I think, like again, I'm proud of my team because they do know that now. It takes time. You just got to be out there and look, feel, touch. Oh my God. Know your media though. A lot of the vendors can help you a ton with that. I've had my Rockwell vendors, my peat vendors, they'll tell you what that product is meant to do. They'll tell you what it's supposed to do and how it's supposed to work and how it was designed. They'll give you those numbers like a 40% dry back. So please bug your vendors. Anything else? Good. Anybody online?